All right, it is 8 o'clock, so let's get started. All right, well, hello everyone. I hope you all had a great weekend and a holiday weekend if you celebrate. Let's just go ahead and get right to the questions. I don't really have any administrative things to mention. This is just kind of a normal week from today forward. Um, it looks like all of the questions submitted so far came from Mott's, so A plus Mott's on that one. There is a Q&A portion of the Hangout that's turned on the right-hand side, and what I'll do is I'll check that in case anyone asks a question while I'm kind of going through their pre-submitted ones. So far, people usually have been asking um, questions about my beard in the sidebar, so I haven't really been covering those too much. So, but if you have a question, you can ask in the sidebar too, and I'll try to get to it. But let's get to the other questions. All right, so Motts, this is your first question. Motts asks, do you have any tips for people that live alone as far as how to stock your kitchen with healthy foods? It feels difficult to shop for things like vegetables without being forced to buy them in quantities that will expire before I can eat them all myself. This is a really great question, so thank you for asking it. In this particular case, I would highly recommend that you buy vegetables in frozen, fruit too, as well as cooking and freezing them after the fact if you buy them fresh. So, for example, I'll buy a giant bag of frozen broccoli florets. That's like the top part of the broccoli, and I'll basically cook the entire bag at one time. It's like 4 pounds or something from Sam's Club. Uh, fill up 2 baking trays, put them in the oven, and roast them, and then I'll just portion it out for the week. And once it's kind of mixed in with other foods, I'll just freeze the entire container. So that way, I'm not buying a bunch of fresh broccoli that's going to waste. You can also buy like smaller frozen servings and cook them as needed, where basically you can just make the entire package and eat the whole thing. It's not really going to be too many calories because it's just green vegetables. Frozen vegetables are similar to fresh vegetables since they tend to be flash frozen when they're harvested. In some cases, you'll get more nutrients and they'll be actually fresher than the fresh vegetables, just because when they're frozen, they're usually frozen at the farm where they're harvested. When they pick the vegetables and transport them for selling, they are transported to the grocery store, and they're unloaded at the grocery store, and they sit in the cooler, and then they put them on the shelf, and they sit on the shelf, and then you bring them home, and then they sit in your fridge. So you actually may get fresher vegetables if you're reheating them from frozen. So, so even when shopping for a family of four, I do find that buying lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, they all go bad way too quickly, and you can't really use them, and it results in a lot of wasted food and money as a consequence. So the bulk of what I buy is mostly frozen. So I'll buy like stir-fry vegetables, broccoli, asparagus, stuff like that. You can get even Walmart has really cheap packs of frozen vegetables like that. I even buy my fruit frozen. So I eat strawberries and blueberries every single day, but I buy them frozen because they're just so much easier to deal with. The strawberries are already sliced. You don't have to, wash them, peel them. Just I put them in a bowl, heat them up in the microwave, and add some Greek yogurt, and I'm good to go. And it's quick and easy. But there are a couple things I do buy fresh, and that's like baby carrots, bananas, broccoli slaw, and just lettuce for salads. But you can buy those in like single serving bags that are much smaller, especially like salads and baby carrots and things like that. And bananas are so cheap that you could just buy one bunch of bananas and it should last you for a week. Um, if the bananas become too ripe, you can freeze them, and it kind of makes like an ice cream. Mott's, I know that you and I talked about you going a little bit lower carb, so the bananas aren't really going to work, but really ripe bananas put in the freezer kind of make like a ice cream that's really just frozen bananas that's really good, though. So um, the next question also comes from Mott's, and Mott's asks, when a workout gets entered into MyFitnessPal and it subtracts the calories from your daily total, does that mean we get to eat more, or should we just stick to the targets you give us? I'm really glad you asked this one because I see this coming up more often, and I've noticed other people that are um, showing their exercise in MyFitnessPal, and it's basically telling them they can eat a lot more, and then they're wondering why they're not seeing any progress. So I'd actually ask that you turn off entering your workouts in MyFitnessPal, and I'd rather you track your workouts in Photocracy. That way you can still have like graphs and a history of what you've done, but you're not going to have the calorie adjustment. Real quick, the reason for that is MyFitnessPal, their algorithm that tells you how many calories to eat, like as an automatic goal, tends to give you too few calories, and then the exercise calculations tend to be far too aggressive. So you end up actually usually overeating and possibly gaining weight if you listen to what they tell you to do, and also under consuming protein if you go on their guidelines. So please stick to your targets regardless of how much you exercise. You don't want to be eating back the calories you burn from exercise. For the most part, everyone that I work with is usually has fat loss as their primary goal. There's a couple exceptions, but this applies to you if your primary goal is fat loss. If you have a primary goal that's something other than fat loss, meaning getting stronger, preparing for a race, something like that. So when your training is a higher priority than your fat loss, it may be a different story. And the reason for that is you want to have be able to fuel your workout adequately so that you can recover from it to do it again, because the training is the main thing. But for the people whose primary goal is fat loss, you don't want to eat back any calories. If you're getting to the point, you're listening to this, where you feel that your training is a higher priority, let's talk about it, and we can kind of go from there and see. I find in those cases something like calorie cycling is better, where you just automatically have a higher calorie goal on workout days, but not what MyFitnessPal is telling you burn, because again, they're overestimates. It's better to be conservative and kind of base what you're eating on workouts, after workouts, based on what your results you're seeing, meaning like rather than say, oh, you burn 800 calories from your workout, just eat 800 calories more. It's a lot better to slightly increase and then look at the data after like 2 weeks or so, and then go off of that, off of real world results rather than whatever their estimations are. All right, and on to our last question, that also comes from Motz. Motz said, I read an article on the importance of getting enough sleep for weight loss and quality of life in general, but it seems like more and more as life gets busy, getting adequate sleep is difficult sometimes. Do you have any problems with this during your experience? And if so, what helped you out? So thank you for the question. That article is absolutely right. Getting quality sleep in the right amount is absolutely critical for fat loss and health in general. What is the right amount? That's going to differ from person to person. So using myself and one of my friends as an example, if I get any less than 7 hours of sleep, I can barely function. I don't think it's safe for me to operate a vehicle if I get less than 7 hours of sleep. I know someone who's similar in age to me that he can go out on a work night and go to a club and come home at 4 a.m. and then be at work at 7 a.m. and he's absolutely fine. I actually joke with him that he actually functions better and is a nicer person the less sleep he gets. I don't know how he does it, but it's just the differences between people. So for me, I need 7 plus. I do great when I have 10 plus. So that's the amount of sleep, but you can't really skimp on quality of sleep either. So I used to have big problems falling asleep and staying asleep, where I would get less than 7 hours of sleep and I'd feel like crap, but no matter what I do when I actually went to bed, I wouldn't be tired. I'd be tired all day long. I'd be falling asleep on the couch at the dinner table, and then I'd go in bed and I'd just lay there and think, and I just couldn't fall asleep. So I did a decent amount of research to solve that problem for myself, and actually wrote an article about that on my website. But I'll kind of summarize the basics for you to kind of get you started. The big one for me was, I always played video games since I was a small kid, and as an adult, I was big into MMOs like World of Warcraft, Ultima Online, Shadowbane. Those were the big 3 that I played. There was a couple other that I tried, but those were the big 3 that were the biggest uses of my time. So I would always stay up late playing those. But one of the things is that electronic screens, like computers, cell phones, tablets, not so much TVs, because you're farther away from a TV than you would be from a computer screen or a tablet or a phone, but they emit a light that's color is blue. And that blue light is telling your body, when it hits your eyes and your skin, that it's daytime. So what happens is there's a sleep hormone called melatonin that your body naturally produces that kind of makes you wind down. When your body's getting hit with that blue light, you start waking up. So that's going to make it harder for you to fall asleep and stay asleep, because your body's circadian rhythm, that's like the sleep cycle that your body naturally falls into, is being told that it's daytime when you're ready to sleep. Like you're tired enough to sleep and your brain needs to sleep. you're being told, hey, it's daytime, stay awake. So to solve that problem, I use an app, a computer app on my desktop and laptop called FLux. It's f.lux. What it does is it changes the color temperature of your screen to be more red tinted. Now, if you do any color sensitive work like photo editing, you'll want to like have the setting to turn that off, like a key binding to turn it off. But for normal usage, you can't really tell the difference unless it's in a transition period. So it'll like figure out where you are in the world, and it'll like be aware of where the sun is, and as the sun starts to go down, it'll lower the color temperature to not be as blue. You can get something similar for Android phones, but from what I've heard, it's a battery drain. So for iPhones, unless you have a jailbroken iPhone, you're pretty much limited to like a screen protector that blocks the blue light. And I had one of those on my old phone. I just got a new phone, so I haven't had a chance to get a new one. I'm not sure how effective that is. Regardless, though, you should try to limit electronics before bed as much as possible. Like try to have maybe 30 to 40 minutes of electronics free time before bed, which you could use to like meditate or read, stretch out. Just no electronic time before then. That should help you. It should help your natural melatonin production and tell your body that you're ready to go to sleep. Another thing that helps with that is you should make your bedroom as dark as possible, and you can do that with blackout blinds or wearing a sleep mask. And that helps with your body's melatonin production to kind of tell your body, hey, it's not daytime anymore, it's dark out. Because we live in a world where there's lights on 24/7, cities are lit up, bright lights coming in our window, that our bodies kind of get away from that. So those things can help. I also wear earplugs to kind of dampen noise, or you can use like a white noise machine that's just kind of like a hissing or the sound of the ocean can help you calm down. I've also tried lowering the temperature in my bedroom by like 5 to 10 degrees, so when I go to bed we just turn the heat down, and or if it's the summertime we'll put fans directly on us to keep us cool the whole night, and that kind of helps you fall into sleep faster. Some other things regarding the bedroom, you could kind of make sure the bedroom doesn't have any clutter, or remove your TV, don't have a computer in there, put like tape over any lights that are like really annoying and blinky, like on an alarm clock, unless you really need it. And if you have something like that, like a Wi-Fi device, keep it farther away from you than you need it. Like if you have a phone next to your bed, or anything like a computer on your nightstand, you probably want to move them away as far as possible because the Wi-Fi signals apparently can keep you awake too. Let's see. You could try to have a consistent bedtime because our bodies like having a routine. So I found that anytime I try to go to bed around the same time every day, with some exceptions on weekends, maybe a little bit later, that's really improved my sleep and made it more consistent, and I feel more relaxed and that I sleep better when I do that. The next one is something that I've been kind of experimenting with in 2015 is cutting back on my caffeine intake. I used to cut off caffeine. The last time I'd have caffeine would be like 4:30, 5 o'clock, and then I'd be awake till midnight, and I have to get up at 5. So that's cutting into my 7 hours that I mentioned. So you may want to try cutting back on the caffeine intake, but not necessarily like overall, but I mean like by a certain time. So let's say don't have any caffeine after noon. That way you'll be able to get tired toward the end of the day and go to sleep easier and faster at nighttime. The last thing is that I mentioned your body produces something called melatonin. It's a hormone in your brain that helps you fall asleep. You can take supplemental melatonin. You probably want to talk to your doctor before you start just taking supplements out of the blue. But you can get supplementary melatonin. It's non-habit forming, and the doses are pretty small. Please recall that more does not always equal better. So taking more melatonin can have negative effect on your sleep. So like you may only need like 1 to 3 milligrams, and that may actually be worthwhile as long as your doctor approves, and that can help you get to sleep and stay asleep longer. And they have ones that are like slow release, where it will release gradually over the night to make sure you kind of stay asleep. And one more thing. I kind of touched on this before, where there's a balance you have to hit with getting the right amount of water. Meaning, in general, when people are new to improving their fitness, they're probably not drinking enough water. I, like most people, kind of took that to an extreme and started drinking too much water. One of the unfortunate results of that is you end up peeing a lot more, and if you drink a lot of water right before bed, it means you're going to be up in the middle of the night peeing before bed. So I try to cut off my water intake, my fluid intake, also by a certain time, so that when I go to sleep, I'm not getting up in the middle of the night multiple times, and that can really help too. So that's maybe something to look at. All right, that covers all of the submitted questions. Thank you, Mats, for taking care of that, with all those questions. Mats has another question, and so to give some background on this one, Mats was having some issues with cravings, and I recommended that possibly considering lowering carb intake and going with a low-carb diet as kind of a measure to kind of reset taste buds and get rid of some of those cravings. And Mats is asking, how long would I say that it takes for it to take effect? Is it a permanent thing even after I hit my weight loss goal, or will I eventually be able to eat carbs again? So that's a great question. So the initial adaptation period for low carb could be anywhere from a week to 2 weeks, at which point you probably won't be craving them anymore. And one of the side effects is you'll likely be in a state called ketosis. That's not diabetic acidosis, I think it's called. It's really just that your body is switched over to not using carbs for fuel anymore, and it's going to use your body fat for fuel. So that should help hunger immensely and cravings immensely, because the side effect of being in ketosis is that it blunts hunger, and most people report that they can't actually eat close to their goal calories for the day because they're just not hungry anymore. As to will that stop cravings at the same time, it's hard to say. That's a pretty individualized thing. It's possible that you still may have some cravings, but they may become less over time. And as far as whether or not it's permanent, I would say that yes, once you're kind of closer to your goal, you could try to reintroduce carbs, especially to assist in your weightlifting. At that point, I would say you don't want to go from eating like really low carb to like then immediately eating high carb like the next day, because you'll be sick. One of the things is that you have bacteria in your gut that help you digest foods, and they feed on fiber, and it's one of the things is they prefer whatever food they're used to getting to help you with digestion. So if the gut bacteria are used to lower carb diet and you all of a sudden eat a bunch of carbs, you're probably going to feel like crap is what's going to happen. You might feel sick. You might just feel lethargic, when the side opposite should be true. You should feel like you have a bunch of energy. So if you were wanting to try carbs after you've reached your goal, I would look at specific carbs to reintroduce like one at a time and see how they make you feel. Like say for example, sweet potatoes. Do sweet potatoes trigger carb cravings for you? Like, are you craving potato chips after eating sweet potatoes? So if you are, I'd say don't eat sweet potatoes because they're triggering a potato craving for you, even though they're not the same as regular potatoes. That way you can kind of add things back in and experiment, and you could definitively say, okay, this carb causes a craving, this one doesn't. And that way you can bring them in at certain times of the day too, meaning after a workout for your dinner meal, you can have carbs then. You could continue with low carb in the morning. And that way it's really just kind of adding them in piece by piece, and you're not going from like 0 to 200 carbs, in a single day and feeling horrible about it. And that way you kind of, one of the things with low carb too is when you drop carbs, you have usually a large water weight drop. And let's just say don't eat carbs for 2 weeks and then you eat a bunch. The scale is going to jump back up that same amount. It's not fat gain. It's just that your body is now storing all the water you've been drinking back into your body. When you're eating low carb, that doesn't happen. So the short answer is it depends. I'd be more than willing to help you with that once we get to that point, and we can experiment, like we said, and kind of see what fits and what doesn't. And that way you'll have a list of things where, hey, I tried this, it brings up my cravings, probably shouldn't have it. Just to add on to that, now that I think about it, is I did that for a while. I cut out carbs because I was getting hungrier and hungrier and hungrier, and I still have carbs that I know that are triggers for me, even after having lost 200 pounds, and I've maintained it for about 7 years now. Um, Yesterday was Easter and my wife's birthday. My plan was to not have any of my kids' Easter candy. That didn't really happen, but once I started eating it, I just kept wanting more, and I had to kind of reach a point where I said, that's enough. Even though that I can eat carbs, there are times when my plan for my coach includes upwards of 400 grams of carbs a day, depending on what source they're from. If they're all from like not candy carbs, I can eat 4 grams of carbs, feel fine, and high salt, high sugar. That's when you run into problems where they're really like hyper palatable and they don't fill me up and they just make me crave more. So I in general try to avoid them. Um, Sometimes I'll have one here and there and just track it in advance. But at times like Easter, I probably shouldn't be around that much candy if I can avoid it. So I hope that helps. Let me flip around and see if there. All right, I am not seeing any more questions asked. Thank you again, everyone, for watching. Thank you again, Mats, for asking all these questions. I think they're great questions you're asking, and I hope that I can help you with my answers. Everyone have a great night, and I'll be talking to everyone soon. Take care.